Welcome to this Elite Health Masterclass Explainer. Today, we're going to dive deep into a topic that has absolutely profound implications for modern life, especially since digital overload and highly sedentary lifestyles are constantly challenging our cognitive resilience. We often think of the brain as this isolated supercomputer, right? Just sitting securely inside the skull, completely disconnected from the neck down. But what if I told you that every single step you take, every weight you lift, and literally every movement you make is part of a highly interconnected biological upgrade for your central nervous system? Well, let's dive into this. We're going to explore the cutting-edge science of micromental health, sleep optimization, and healthy aging, and we'll discover how movement acts as the ultimate architect of the human brain. It's a pretty fascinating question, isn't it? How does just flexing a bicep literally change the physical size and structure of your brain? For decades, we've totally separated physical fitness from cognitive performance. It was like they were two completely different worlds. But the latest neurobiological research absolutely shatters that illusion. Your skeletal muscles aren't just there for locomotion. They actually act as an endocrine organ. When you contract your muscles, you're initiating this massive systemic communication network that travels all the way from your peripheral limbs directly into the deepest regions of your brain, triggering growth, supercharging waste clearance, and even regulating your emotions.
Section 1. The brain-body connection.
Okay, to really understand this connection, we have to look down at the molecular level, specifically at a molecule called BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Think of BDNF as, well, high-grade fertilizer for your brain. Synthesized predominantly in the hippocampus and the cerebral cortex, it's a primary mediator of neuroplasticity, which is the brain's incredible ability to rewire itself. When you exercise, three distinct things happen to boost BDNF. First, local neuronal activity fires up. Second, peripheral humoral signaling kicks in. And third, the actual physical force of increased blood flow rushing through your vessels like a river, a phenomenon known as hemodynamic shear stress, upregulates the synthesis of this crucial protein. BDNF then binds to receptors in the brain, promoting the survival of the neurons you already have and encouraging the growth of brand new synapses. But here's the thing, BDNF doesn't work alone. And this brings us to an incredible biological journey. It's almost like a specialized package delivery from your bicep straight up to your brain. While BDNF is central to synaptic plasticity, the actual birth of new neurons, what we call structural neurogenesis, requires a constant supply of a peripheral growth factor called VEGF, or vascular endothelial growth factor. So when you exercise, your contracting skeletal muscles express this VEGF. This molecule then enters your systemic bloodstream, travels all the way up, and remarkably crosses the heavily guarded blood-brain barrier. Finally, it acts right on neuroprogenitor cells in your hippocampus, triggering them to divide and form new neurons. Your muscles are literally sending the exact building blocks your brain needs to grow.
Section 2. Immediate cognitive upgrades.
So the crucial point we've seen is that exercise fundamentally alters our brain structure over time. But what if you need an immediate boost for deep work or intense focus right now? Well, a really interesting randomized controlled study of 85 subjects looked at cognitive function for up to 2 hours after a single bout of vigorous aerobic exercise. And they found a stark contrast between the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus. Acute aerobic exercise instantly and significantly improved prefrontal cortex-dependent functioning. We're talking about your executive function, your attention, and your processing speed. And those benefits lasted for up to 2 hours post-exercise. However, the hippocampus, which governs your long-term memory, showed absolutely no immediate acute improvements. So if you're about to sit down for a heavy session of focused deep work, a quick bout of aerobic exercise is practically your biological primer for the prefrontal cortex. Driving this immediate prefrontal upgrade is something called the monoaminergic surge. Acute exercise activates some major neurotransmitter pathways. First off, dopamine spikes in the striatum, which heavily enhances your sense of reward and motivation. Second, noradrenaline elevates in the prefrontal cortex, hugely improving your attention and sensory filtering. But here is a fascinating scientific contradiction we really have to address, especially to dispel some popular health myths out there. Serotonin. While clinical evidence definitely shows exercise improves mood, meta-analyses reveal that circulating systemic plasma serotonin levels actually remain largely unchanged, meaning the data is just all over the place, leaving scientists kind of scratching their heads. Blood levels of serotonin simply don't reliably reflect the mood benefits we feel, which points to a much more localized and complex neurological effect happening behind the scenes.
Section 3. Architecting a better brain.
Now, those are the acute effects, but how do we actually leverage movement for healthy aging and long-term cognitive resilience? Listen, if you take away just one core concept from this entire masterclass today, let it be this. Structural neurogenesis requires a constant supply of peripheral muscle-derived growth factors. Let me repeat that. The brain simply cannot structurally upgrade itself without the biochemical support of active skeletal muscles. Over months of regular training, regions like the left and right prefrontal cortex, the hippocampus, and the cingulate cortex actually become more functionally interconnected. Studies show the hippocampus can legitimately increase in volume by around 2% over a year of aerobic training. To put that in perspective, sedentary control groups in the same time frame typically experience volume loss. To prove just how dependent the brain is on muscle, researchers conducted this landmark study comparing normal wild-type mice with genetically engineered mice whose muscle growth signaling had been, well, essentially turned off. After a 2-week running protocol, the normal wild-type mice showed increased central hippocampal VEGF levels, proliferating neural precursor cells, and improved endurance. But the engineered mice, they failed to increase central VEGF and showed absolutely no increase in neurogenesis. I mean, without the muscle there to send the signal, brain growth just completely halted.
Section 4. Sleep and Waste Clearance.
This interconnected systems thinking leads us perfectly into how daytime movement dictates nighttime brain repair. And the secret here lies in the glymphatic system. It's basically a specialized macroscopic waste clearance network. Just as your body makes lactic acid when it burns energy, your brain cells literally make waste after using fuel. The glymphatic system utilizes a convective flow of cerebral spinal fluid along perivascular spaces to flush metabolic waste and neurotoxic proteins right out of the brain interstitium. It's a mechanical washing process, like a deep clean for your mind. And exercise is what primes the pump. The elevated cardiac output from your workout increases the pulsatility of your cerebral vasculature, literally driving this fluid exchange. Let's walk through exactly how this happens, step by step. First, exercise restores the polarization of water channels on your astrocytes, essentially organizing the brain's plumbing so everything flows correctly. Then, when you enter deep, slow-wave sleep, the interstitial spaces in your brain physically expand by up to 60%. That is a massive structural shift. And this expansion allows cerebrospinal fluid to rush in and flush out all that metabolic waste, including lactic acid and amyloid beta. So by exercising during the day, you are directly optimizing the physiological window for this critical glymphatic clearance at night.
Section 5. Shielding the aging brain. Clearing out that amyloid beta is absolutely vital for disease prevention. To understand how exercise actively defends against cognitive decay, let's look at microglia. You can think of them as the resident janitors and immune cells of your central nervous system. In neurodegenerative diseases, chronic exposure to pathogenic aggregates triggers these cells into a highly destructive, hyperactivated pro-inflammatory state, which drives synaptic loss. But here's the amazing part. Physical exercise acts like a switch. Mediated by exerkines like adiponectin crossing the blood-brain barrier, exercise shifts those microglia into a protective, anti-inflammatory phagocytic state. In this specific state, they actively clean up cellular debris and resolve damage, rather than causing it. And when those microglia are functioning properly, they enact some truly incredible Alzheimer's defense mechanisms. Regular exercise lowers chronic neuroinflammation and significantly reduces the load of amyloid beta plaques and hyperphosphorylated tau bundles. But here is a really fascinating, lesser-known mechanism. It actually restores iron homeostasis in your oligodendrocytes. Now, these are the glial cells that produce the myelin sheath, the insulation for your nerve fibers. Iron is strictly required to produce myelin, but in Alzheimer's, that myelin breaks down, releasing toxic levels of iron that cause massive oxidative stress. Exercise reduces the number of these pathological iron-containing cells, increasing the proportion of healthy myelin-producing cells, which keeps your neuronal communication lightning fast as you age.
Section 6. Precision Exercise Prescriptions.
So, we know the biology is profound, the mechanics are there, but how do we actually apply this in our daily lives? Well, when researchers conducted a rigorous network meta-analysis of older adults, they mapped out the exact effectiveness of different exercise types across various cognitive domains. They looked at aerobic, resistance, high-intensity interval training, and mind-body exercises. And the data clearly shows us that not all exercise impacts the brain equally. It is a highly, highly specialized response. By analyzing cumulative probability graphs, known as sucra rankings, which basically calculate a win probability for medical interventions,
we get university-level concrete evidence of what works best. For example, resistance training had an 83.3% probability of being the absolute most effective intervention for improving overall cognitive function. Meanwhile, mind-body exercises like yoga or tai chi showed an astonishing 90.6% probability of being the optimal intervention for protecting working memory. That's a real game changer. Let's break this down into a highly actionable matrix, basically your precision prescriptions. If your main goal is overall cognition and inhibitory control, which is crucial for deep work and avoiding daily distractions, resistance training is your go-to. The data recommends 12 weeks, 2 to 3 times a week for 45 minutes a session. Now, if you want to target memory function and spatial learning, aerobic exercise is king. Ideally, you want to hit 60 minutes twice a week. And lastly, if you need to optimize working memory and task switching, high-frequency mind-body exercise for 30 to 60 minutes per session offers the greatest neurobiological benefits, highly likely through vagal nerve stimulation and parasympathetic activation. As we wrap up this masterclass, our core thesis becomes crystal clear. Exercise is a multi-target, systemic neuromedicine. It really isn't just about cardiovascular fitness or trying to look good. Through the coordinated actions of neurotrophic factors, peripheral growth factors, and metabolic exerkines, regular physical activity is a fully integrated health intervention. It optimizes your sleep architecture, it drives lymphatic waste removal, it completely reprograms your brain's immune system, and it literally expands the gray matter in your vital cognitive hubs. Which leaves us with one final, incredibly vital question. Knowing that your muscles hold the literal building blocks of your brain's future resilience, how will you prescribe your own movement today to architect your brain for tomorrow? The science is abundantly clear, the protocols are mapped out for us, and the power to change your mind is quite literally right there in your muscles. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Until next time, keep moving and keep learning.